Hey, welcome back everybody. So straight into it, we're going to be looking at the market update and forecast. How has the trucking market changed over the past week? And where do you have to go if you're a flatbed, dry van, or reefer carrier? We're going to look at diesel prices, volumes in the general market, capacity, and then we will go into details for those three equipment types. So unfortunately, my vibe board is acting up. It's shutting down every 5 seconds. So no vibe board today. We're going to be looking at all the charts right here. They will be downloadable down below, but hopefully it gets the job done. Ready? Let's go. Starting with the total capacity, as of last week, we lost an additional 540 carriers net. This is as of January 12th, and that puts us at a loss of 1,222 carriers net over the past 2 weeks. Now, if we look at the volume chart, the general freight volume, again, this is being compared to last year, which is in light blue. The white line is us right now. So we can right away see that volumes are lower this week compared to 2023 levels. I have a feeling that this has a lot to do with weather. I'm noticing that a lot of shippers just don't show up to work to load a truck because of the weather, especially in those northern states. But you guys let me know. All right, now let's talk about rejection rates. Something is obviously brewing here. Again, we're comparing to 2023 levels, the blue line. You can see the white line, which is us right now. The rejections made kind of a U-turn and are going in the opposite direction from what we saw in 2023. Now, currently, rejection rates are at 5.12%, which is it's not great, but it's nice. But what is actually causing it? Well, we can't forget the fact that weather might be causing it. A lot of people don't want to go to certain areas in the United States right now. But number two, I think it has something to do with what I mentioned at the end of the year last year, which is the contract carriers are getting squeezed right now. So if we take a look at the next chart, we can see the correlation between rejection rates, which are the white line, and the contract to spot spread. So the blue line, which is what contract carriers are getting paid compared to spot carriers, the closer it is to zero, the closer they are getting paid pretty much the same rate as on the spot market. So as contract carriers start earning less than spot carriers, the rejections tend to increase. So if we look at the latest data, which is unfortunately 2 weeks behind for contract carriers, we can see that they have been seeing that push towards the spot market rate. Currently, they're earning 59 cents per mile more than spot carriers. Now, this is still a big gap, but we have been seeing 75 to 80 cent per mile differences. So as contract carriers' rates get renegotiated, we should be seeing more rejections. Then we have diesel prices, which have been a source of good news, but as of the last few days, they are not cooperating. Diesel prices have ticked up a little bit and are currently at a national average of $3.96 per gallon. However, according to Freight Waves, this upward movement will not hold for long because oil futures are on their way down. Now moving on to everything dry van related, starting with the spot market volumes. So if we look at this chart, we can see the blue line. There was an uptick in volumes on the spot market for dry vans as of last week. It's no surprise because last week we also saw a huge uptick in general freight volumes. Now, unfortunately, this didn't have any positive effect on dry van rates on the spot market, and those went down as of last week from $2.17 per mile to around $2.10 per mile. So the question, of course, is always, where do you need to go next week? What do you need to do in order to be in a relatively better position than your competition? Well, in order to figure that out, we're going to look at 4 maps for dry vans again. First one is rejections, outbound rejections, then we have volumes, then we have the head haul index, and finally we have the inbound tender rejection rates. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to combine the 4 data sets to figure out what the best market areas are. So number 1 is again Twin Falls, Idaho. The rejection ticked up like crazy from last week to 36.77%. Volume did, however, go down to an index of 60. There are more loads than trucks here, so more negotiating power. but the inbound rejection rate skyrocketed to 32.36%, which means that people are really not looking to go to Idaho, probably because of the weather. The number 2 place is Pendleton, Oregon, where rejections for outbound freight is 36.79% for dry vans. Volume is not that great. It's an index of 32, but there are more loads than trucks here. In terms of inbound rejection rates, those are at 21.93%. Again, not many people want to go to Pendleton, Oregon, because no sane person wants to drive through the Rockies with the chain laws, with the horrible weather right now. Then we have Green Bay, Wisconsin, where the rejection rate for outbound freight is around 14.59%. It is slightly down from last week. The volume index is at 60, which is also down from last week, but there are more loads than trucks in this area, and the inbound rejection rate is at 14%. In general, Green Bay, Wisconsin definitely got worse from last week, but relatively speaking, it's still better than anywhere else. Now, finally, we have Des Moines, Iowa. I think I'm pronouncing this correctly for the first time, where the rejection rate is 16.21%. Volume is at an index of 35, more loads than trucks, and inbound rejection rate of 8.73%. Not as great as everywhere else. Next, we have our reefers. Now, in terms of the spot market volume, we see that there was also an uptick in volume as of last week. And again, it's related to the general market. We saw a huge increase in volume in the general freight market last week. Now, unfortunately, the spot rates for reefers also didn't follow the trajectory of the volume, and they went down from $2.67 per mile to around $2.52 per mile. So again, the question is, what moves do you need to make in order to be in a relatively better position than your competition next week? So just looking at these four maps, number 1 is again Twin Falls, Idaho, a huge increase in outbound tender rejections to 35.82%, an increase in volume from 32 to an index of 52. There are way more loads than trucks here. You can see how blue the market area is, and the inbound rejection is over 15%, which is a drop from last week. Not really surprising if Idaho is a better market because of the lack of capacity. Yeah, people are going to go there. Number 2 is Fargo, North Dakota, another huge increase in rejections to 52.76%, which means that over half the loads from Fargo, North Dakota get rejected. In terms of volume, it did stay the same at an index of 24. There are more loads than trucks there. Not as blue as Idaho, but still more loads than trucks. And the inbound rejection is at 11.71%, which is also an increase from last week. Last but not least, we have flatbeds. Now, looking at the spot market, we can see that volumes also increase, but unlike for dry vans and reefers, this is kind of more normal for flatbeds during this time of year. Now, spot rates, they followed suit for flatbeds, unlike for dry vans and reefers, and those also saw an increase as of last week. They increased from around $2.28 per mile to around $2.32 per mile on average. Now, as a reminder, unfortunately, Sonar does not provide that much data for flatbeds, so I'm forced to make my own charts using data from truck stops. So let's take a look. Where are the best areas to go for flatbeds? So starting with the volume map, the darker blue an area, the more volume comes out of that state. So the darkest states will have over 2,000 loads. The lightest will have less than 100 loads. Now, there are notable differences from last week. Texas load volumes did fall from last week, but then we have Indiana, Ohio, and Pennsylvania, which saw volume increases. Now let's move on to the capacity chart, which shows us how many trucks are in each area. The lighter the area, the less trucks. So the lightest one, like West Virginia, has less than 200 trucks. Anything that is black has over 3,000 trucks, which is only Texas. Red is 1,000 to 2,000 trucks, and so on. You can see the key here. So also a few notable differences here. Capacity decreased in Florida, California, and South Dakota, while it increased in Illinois, Tennessee, and Connecticut. But the biggest question of all is load to truck ratios, right? We want to know where there is overcapacity, where there is undercapacity. So looking at this map, Anything that's red means overcapacity galore. And then we have the peach colored states, which are about 1 load per truck. Yellow colored states are about 2 loads per truck, and green is over 3 loads per truck. Also, some differences from last week. For example, Connecticut now has overcapacity, and then we have Louisiana and Michigan that became worse compared to last week and now have about 1 load per truck. And there are really only 2 states which have over 3 loads per truck at this point, which is Mississippi and Alabama. Now, considering the fact that for the most part it's overcapacity for flatbeds, I do have a quick tip to share with you guys that has worked for me. If we look at a state like Utah where there is overcapacity, there's still a way to make money from Utah. 2 days ago, I booked a load from Utah for over $3 per mile. Going where? Well, Oregon, of course. Because not a lot of people want to pass through the Rockies in this crazy weather, there is a lack of capacity wanting to go to those areas, even though there's overcapacity in general. So if you're a little bit nuts like we are in our company and are willing to go through any weather, this might be a good way to get out of a bad area for a good rate. So yeah, that's what I have for you guys. Apologies for not having the board, but I think these charts, the information doesn't change. It's just the presentation that does. So hopefully these charts do continue to help you. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out in the comments down below or send me an email. I wish you all a fantastic weekend. Stay safe, stay healthy, and keep learning. See you in the next video.